Hello, everyone. Good evening to you all, the people in India and the abroad people in US and Europe. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to our Open Power Academy and Research webinar. Thanks for joining today's webinar, and my pleasure to have you all here. Today's session is going to be on AI fundamentals and deep learning frameworks using IBM Power System. Uh, Dr. Satyam Chekuru from KLE, India, has been working with Open Power Foundation for several years, and he is actually here to give us, a good session about how he has been using Power System as well as, developing the deep learning framework for AI application. I welcome Dr. Chekuru to start the session today. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Ganesh. So hello everyone. As Ganeshan suggested, the title of the talk today would be AI fundamentals and deep learning frameworks using IBM Power Systems. Um, Let me just start with the agenda for the day. So the agenda for the day in 1 hour would be something like the deep learning in AI landscape. Then we will cover a bit of neural network overview, neural network architectures, though I'm not going into the details of each and everything, but it will just be a touch and go type of a stuff wherein you will at least understand, right, how people or how we all could work with different problems, right, on um the power systems with AI as the framework. So I would be discussing about four different type of case studies, which involves facial expressions, emotions, then something on LSTM, and something on natural language processing, then something on hyperspectral imaging, and then trying to combine, right, 2D images and the depth images for certain problems, right, which would be used for automotive electronics or for further researches, right? So this would be the overall agenda. So it will not be very, very technically exhaustive in a sense that I'll not be going into the mathematics of anything, but I'll just try to have an overall uh, idea of how AI frameworks could be used for solving various categories of problems. So this would be the flow actually. Yeah. So let's start with a very, very basic premise of, right, what is the deep learning, right, landscape position in the whole bigger AI landscape. So if you see, uh, it's not that AI is a very new thing, right? AI has been there for centuries, right, in sci-fi movies and in so many other web series and so many serials, right, starting from Star Trek like thing to so many things, right? And recently there is a surge in this deep learning section, okay, and this is because of the computational element, right, which we have encountered recently in past 5 to 6 years, wherein GPUs came into prominence and you had a lot of compute power with you available, right, for processing huge amount of data. And this huge amount of data was again available because of this boom in this data space. Because of big data, you have so many phones, you have so many websites which collect a lot of information, a lot of data, right, Facebooks and all this stuff. So gradually what happened was there was a culmination or intersection, right, of big data, artificial intelligence, and because of which the applications and the users demanded, right, lot of what to say, results, right, newer results for the same type of a problem. And that was possible because of this advent of GPUs. And then you have power systems, you had a lot of power, compute power essentially with you, which was not available when people started, right, initially, this artificial intelligence and machine learning stuff. So this was how deep learning gained prominence, and now all of the applications which you see even on mobile phones, right, are somehow related to AI and deep learning or machine learning, something like that. So technically speaking, if you see this way, uh, neural networks, right, uh, deep learning, machine learning, AI, and big data, right, are all interconnected to each other, right, using this type of a formula. So this is how basically deep learning is gaining prominence. Now, let us try to understand how it all started. It all started with neural networks, and this is not a very new thing, right? This is a very, very old thing. Neural networks were there since not two, actually 4 to 5 decades back. People started using neural networks, right? You had this neurons, feed forward back propagation type of neural networks. Then you had RBF, SOMs, and so on and so forth. But the basic idea is just to have a initial starting, right, of this talk. I thought, like, let me just tell you what a neural network is. So you have got these inputs, and then you have this uh, output right here, and this in between you have this transfer function, and then you have a activation function based on which, right, you get the output of a neural network. So neural network is essentially basically a model, right, which can be trained, right? And when you are doing a training operation, it basically means there are two things which you are going to do a training for, right? You have the content and you have the expected output. So keeping these two things in mind with you, right, you try to train this neural network model, okay, with various other mathematical equations and mathematical modeling into it, which basically is trying to give you, okay, a feel or a sense of your system trying to learn as human beings try to learn, right? So this is how it all started, with a single neuron, okay. And this is a very, very basic neuron diagram, right? uh, and then at present, right, uh, the stage has come wherein majority of the applications, right, will have these four type of neural network architecture. You have this feed forward neural network, which has been abundantly used, right, for a lot of applications. But the efficiency with which these feed forward neural networks used to work was not fully exploited, and that was the reason. One of the reasons was you did not have the compute power with you, even though compute power was there, right, with high performance computing systems. But the accessibility to those high performance computing systems was restricted, right, to a very, very niche scientific community. But nowadays, since the hardware costs have come down, the compute costs have come down, so the accessibility, right, uh, has reached a lot of people. And that's how even the feed forward neural network application development has improved now. And then you have this recurrent neural networks, which came after the feed forward neural networks, and so many other neural network types came. And recurrent neural networks have gained prominence recently, right, because of certain advantages. And then you have this LSTMs and CNNs. So these are the various categories of neural networks or neural network architectures which people try to work with nowadays, okay. So let us see in brief, one by one, of what these type of model or these networks mean, right? So this is a feed forward neural network. It's basically like you have this forward propagation, right, and then you have this backward propagation as well in these cases. So the basic idea is you have certain input values to be given to this neural network, let us say X, and you have this output value to be decided as Y, for example. And you say that this combination is going to give you a classification or give you an output which is supposed to be treated as A. And now what effectively happens is you go on training in such a manner that up till you get A, right, you go on decreasing the error, so that effectively what you're trying to do is you're going to train the network in such a manner that these weights get adjusted, so that when you give any other input, right, which is somehow near to this X and Y, it gives you somehow near to the value of A. This is how basically, roughly, right, in a layman's term, the feed forward networks behave. Of course, you have mathematics, you have got a lot of formulas to be discussed on that front, but I'm not going into the details of any of those. I'm just trying to tell you overall picture of how all of this, right, can be used for developing various types of applications. Okay, so see this type of neural network training, okay, or this type of a feed forward neural network model has got certain specific inherent disadvantages. So to overcome this disadvantage, right, there is this feed, okay, which is a feedback loop, right, into a neural network model, right. So this particular type of a feedback loop into itself, okay, gives you a recurrent layer type of stuff, and this recurrent layer, right, gives certain specific important characteristic, right, to the neural network, right. It can learn more. It's not that the feed forward back propagation type of a neural network never learned something. It was trained to behave in a specific manner. It it is successful, but still you need certain inherent relationship between the previous entity, right, which you are using for training, and the next entity, okay, which you would be using for training. So there will be some inherent relationship between these three entities, right. And once you have a model which can at least to some extent, right, understand this inherent relationship among these uh, three nearby data points, right, and try to imbibe that characteristic feature and then learn from it, okay, this behavior will give you certain improved performance of learning, right. So this is what recurrent neural networks uh, generally do, okay. And so you have this feedback loop, right, into the various recurrent layers, and that is how, no, people started experimenting with different types of networks. Now, this again has a drawback because it cannot, uh, um, what to say, save, okay, or it cannot remember, right, the interconnection between uh, the data um, points, right, for too long a data, in the sense you have this point, right, and it can keep the characteristic information about this particular this data point, this data point, to some extent this data point or this data point, but it cannot have uh, too much of memory, right, into it to save in the intricacies or the relationship between the more data points, right. So what actually happens is this got evolved, right, into something which was called as LSTMs, right, long short term memory type of network, okay, wherein this type of a network, right, can have a memory structure, right, which can save in, okay, lot of previous information, right. So if you're talking of something like a sequence of words, right, and each word has to have a link in a full of a sentence and then a paragraph, so that type of relationship, right, requires memory. And in a neural network, right, if you can embed in that memory portion of it, okay, for training, and it can be saved, and that amount is very huge, right. So for example, if you try to think it in this manner, that instead of remembering, right, some incident of yours, right, just for 1 week, and if you can remember it for, let us say, 1 year or 2 years, right, so that requires a lot of memory, right, the past information which you want to retain, so it has to require a lot of memory. So if that memory could be provided to the network and that could again be used for training further, right, that is how LSTMs, right, behave. So you have a lot of memory introduced into it, and that memory could be used, okay, the content in that memory could be used for training, right, the networks very efficiently, right, more efficiently than the previous two types of memories which we talked about, two types of neural networks which we talked about, okay. So this is how the networks evolved gradually. And then you have this very famous thing which nowadays people use, right, it's called as convolution neural networks. So effectively, you have, these are called as deep neural networks, right? Deep neural networks in the sense that the network hidden layers, right? It's not that people did not know neural networks. We talked about input layer and the output layer, right? And in between there was a single hidden layer which people talked about. But in case of deep neural networks, you have what? Multiple hidden layers, right? Two or three types of, two or three, more than three, more than 16, right? More, there are various architectures which are now available, right? So more the hidden layers, right, the more the depth of your neural network. That's what people say. And this convolution neural network basically does a convolution operation. So if you, and these are specifically used, right, for image processing applications. So convolution neural network basically is an implementation of a convolution filter, okay, which basically mixes it with the concept of neural networks. So you have convolution filtering concept or convolution concept with you, and you use that, okay, for processing images. So it effectively means that you have got a convolution layer here, and then you have got a pooling layer, because when you have convolution layer, and you can have lot of convolution layers, right, and each of these convolution layer is going to be a convolution filter. So each filter will try to give you, okay, a specific feature which you can extract from this input image. We will try to see what it means, right? But effectively, each convolution filter is going to give a specific feature which you can extract in that particular image, okay? And then since the dimensionality of that particular data, okay, which you are trying to extract from that image is very huge, you then have a pooling layer, okay, which reduces the dimensionality. Okay, this is dimensionality reduction, and gradually you can use this particular input, right, to a fully connected neural network, okay, for doing some classification tasks. So in actuality, what this means is this particular portion, right, is trying to auto generate, okay, or extract certain specific characteristic features, okay, which you want this neural net, this fully connected network, okay, to utilize for giving you certain specific classification, right? So this is in totality, right, the whole neural network architecture model classification. In the sense, you have neural networks, the neural networks are used to learn something or make your system more intelligent. And how are you going to make them learn? You're going to give them a training data set. Now this training data set is going to have two informations. If it is a supervised type of a learning mechanism, right, I'm not going into the unsupervised type of learning mechanisms, but if it's a supervised type of a learning mechanism, you give a network, right, uh, a training data set. Now this training data set actually will have two things, right? It will have the data which you intend uh, the neural network or your machine to learn from. What's it going to learn from? Given x, right, I want it to be represented as y. Okay, given a, you represent it as b, or you want it to be treated as b, right? So given this type of a training information, you tell, okay, that this is if given x, you have to treat it as y, given a, you have to treat it as b. That is what is my what to say, relationship which I want this system to maintain. Once it goes on learning this type of a relationship, right, that is when you tell that, okay, your system is trained. Now once you tell that your system is trained for a specific relationship which you have tried to make it learn, okay, you then try to give some information, right, which is, let us say, in between x and y, right, and then try to understand whether it is going to give you some output, right, which is between a and b. Okay, so something like this is the situation. So once this is done, okay, let us try to understand the basic difference, right, between machine learning and deep learning. Why has deep learning captured so much of interest, and why is that machine learning, which started about 4 decades back, okay, because of various what to say, bottlenecks, right, uh, actually did not give us too many good things. In the sense, it's not that it did not give us good things, but it was not that successful. One of the reasons was computing power. The other reason was the mathematical modeling and the softwares which were related for developing it, right? So one of the things is this: see, machine learning, when it started and still now people talk of machine learning. For example, this is your input, right? And this is an image of a car. Now when you want to use machine learning, okay, you have a neural network, okay, which is able to learn on its own, and let us say tell us that it's a car, okay. So you have got a lot of images: a car image, a bicycle image, a truck image, or whatever. And then once you give the input as a car image, it should detect that it's a car, right? So this neural network has to be trained. When it has to be trained, obviously, when we started doing machine learning, and when people started using artificial intelligence to make systems learn or machines learn, they had to extract in the features which used to represent this car. And based on the person's competency, based on how capable that person is to extract the exact features from this car, okay, which was used to train this neural network, my output was decided. In a sense, if I'm able to find out, let us say hypothetically, right, that my features which I have selected, okay, some features randomly, let us say feature A, feature B, feature C, feature D, okay, could not represent, right, the information which can classify or train my neural network to classify it as a car, right, my system would not work correctly. So it depended upon the person's ability to find out the features, and because of which lot of research, lot of PhDs, right, lot of things were done only in this domain. So people started to think how, for this particular type of image, which features were considered to be better, which features were considered to be good, based on which a lot of PhDs were given, right, and everything was done further. But the effective idea was it depended on the person's ability to find out features in this particular type of image. Come 2017, 2018, you have this approach of deep learning, wherein given an input, right, given an input, my deep neural network does feature extraction and classification, and then it gives me the output. Essentially what it means is this portion of feature extraction, which was this, has been automated. And once I tell that that has been automated, it means that my convolution layer, which we have put here, and the pooling layer here, together to some extent is going to generate the features. So this essentially means there is not lot of manual uh, intervention required, right, at this point now. So what effectively has happened is this has already been automated, and once the feature extraction portion is automated, the classification portion, which we anyways were able to do successfully, right, uh, is added to that particular portion, and you have got a consolidated type of a deep neural network, and you are going to get the output. So this is the basic difference, right, in the approach when you start doing something on deep learning. So there is a lot of confusion, right? When people start doing deep learning, we still think that, okay, certain concepts of machine learning which we have already studied, okay, are required. They are required. It's not that they are not required at all, but certain things have been automated, or certain things have been made so easy, right, that certain specific mathematical uh, issues, right, have been totally removed, right, when you talk of deep neural networks. So this is just the idea of how the shift has happened, right, in this ecosystem of AI and deep learning. So this is how it is. And if you see the next difference, as I told you, this neural network has got a hidden layer. Now, a deep neural network has got lot of hidden layers. And as I told you, CNN, for that matter, has got a lot of hidden layers. And each of these hidden layers, right, uh, are doing certain specific feature extraction for you. So when you talk of CNN, right, let us try to broadly understand that a CNN, the internal layers, right, can have three levels, right, of um, convolution filters. So you have low level features, middle level features, and high level features, which can be extracted by this convolution layer of yours, right? So which we are not able to uh, understand, right, or anticipate by just seeing an image. But when a convolution neural network is given that particular image, it's able to, right, classify which of this particular portion, right, comes under the category of a low level feature for this image, a middle level feature for this image, or a high level feature for this image. So for that matter, a low level feature, right, can be a point, a middle level feature can be a line, or a high level feature can be a triangle or a square which is made up of this line, right? So so this is how the features are extracted. So so I hope that it's a bit clear, in a sense, that how the neural networks have evolved, right? And so this is one of the differences, right? And now let us try to understand how this has changed the workflow, right, of ML and DL type of problems. So in case of a ML workflow, see, you have to collect the data, then you have to define the features. As I told you, this is where the feature extraction portion comes into picture. And then you obviously have a model which you create, right? It can be a feed forward neural network or any type of a neural network, right, which will be taking these features, train itself, okay? And then once trained, right, you give the data to be tested, and then it makes a prediction. So this is how the ML workflow is. Now if you want to convert this particular workflow to a DL workflow, what effectively happens is this particular portion, right, as I shown you, okay, will not be there, and it basically is a deep learning network or something like that. And so this particular portion goes off, and then you collect the data, you use a DNN, okay, and then you train the DL model, and then you test the data, which gives you the prediction. Okay, so this is how the workflow has changed drastically. Okay, so let me just take certain case studies which will be, of using different type of architectures, right? So the first case study which I'm trying to tell you is about automatic detection, right, of facial expressions and emotions. So this uh, is a project which involved high performance computing initially. It involved specifically lot of point cloud data type of stuff, and then we gradually included, right, the artificial intelligence concept into it. the machine learning concept into it. It's not necessary that always you should have a neural network for doing it. I will just show you certain specific um, case studies wherein we are not using a neural network, but at least it's in a position to classify. Okay, so this is one of the very initial things which involves HPC and lot of computations. So we'll start with that and then gradually go to a stage wherein we can use AI, okay, and machine learning and deep learning for our applications. So here what we have tried to do is, you have an input image, then you have these key point extractions, you have to describe the extracted things, and then you do the matching, okay, computationally, not using some learning mechanism, and based on which you can do some expression recognition, right? So there was a database which we had created, and then for testing you can take this image and then do the matching and then do the expression recognition. So this is how we started working, and then this is how we did it. Since we are trying to automatically detect facial expressions, you had this input mesh, and we are talking of three-dimensional models, right? So you had this input image or a model, then you had to extract in these key points, okay, and then taking these key points, you matched with a standard, okay, uh, key points which are supposed to be considered to represent certain specific expressions, right? Like happy, sad, surprise, fear, disgust, and normal. And then you try to basically tell, okay, that what type of expression it is. Okay, so this was how we tried to collect in the data set. We tried to collect the data set using a Kinect camera, and it was a point cloud data. So this is how the data set appeared, right? And this is a PCL data. It's a RGB type of a data. So we are trying to show you certain specific inputs formats. Okay, so this is the type of a PCL data with the RGB thing. And then uh, we used NVIDIA CUDA, NVIDIA GPUs, okay, for trying to do this mapping, okay, and matching. And then we had to work with this PCL data, which is a point cloud data, and trying to understand the correlation and matching between all of this from the descriptor extraction which we did. Essentially it was feature extraction, right? And then you came down to this expression recognition, right? So this is how we got certain results. Okay, so this was the result after the model could actually, right, understand the relationships between these descriptors and then try to give us this output. So this is how we tried to do the automatic detection of facial expressions, and this further we tried to link it with educational environments, right? Yogic environments, then meditation, and then we linked this further to our body parameters, which is still work in progress. So we are trying to link all of this, trying to have a consolidated approach of how the body behaves under stress, how the body behavior, right, impacts the facial expressions. This we have tried for students, right, who are trying to play continuous, right, online video games, right, specifically PUBG and all, and how it's going to affect their body parameters. This is a work in progress which we're trying to do. And yeah, so this is how you can use, right, computational power. And then the second one is a LSTM based lip reading approach for Devanagari script. What we have tried to do now in this particular case study is use LSTMs, right, for lip reading, which could be embedded into our specific initial problem of emotion recognition and detection, or otherwise for certain NLP applications. What we tried to do here is we have taken an input video, okay, and then we have tried to generate data frames, and these data frames are specifically pre-processed, right, to get us some specific parameters and certain values, and we have used the LSTM classifier to predict a text. So what we have tried to do here is we have essentially tried to collect in, right, a video of people who have spoken, okay, a specific text, a specific paragraph, right, from the data set. So this was the paragraph. It is related to Hindi. It's a Devanagari script. So we wanted to try it on Devanagari script. So people were told to read this, okay, and people were uh, told to read it. We created a data set using these frames. So what effectively happened was we wanted to understand by this lip reading frame as to what particular type of a word is spoken from this paragraph. So that was the intention. The intention was that just by seeing the lips of a person, can we try to understand as to what word, okay, or what sentence or what paragraph that person has spoken. So this was the intention. So once we created this type of a data set, okay, then we had to scale in that particular information of lips, right, using two specific techniques. I'm not going into the details of this technique, but it is called as one height extraction method, and then there is a method which is called as two height extraction method. So we used both of them, and then we had this type of a model. Okay, so the sequence to the LSTM was the lip features from each of these frames, right? And then from the LSTM layer, okay, you had a dense hidden layer and then a softmax uh, type of activation at the end, which used to give the output, okay, in the output layer. So the idea was to understand just by giving the right, the lip frame, would we be able to predict the word or a sentence? This was the intention, and we had this done. And if you see the results, right, just by one paragraph, right, and then trying to train this LSTM, okay, with that amount of data, with certain specific epoch values, okay, and the number of words spoken with the number of people. So the variety of lip, what to say, movements, okay, we were able to get this much amount of accuracy. And if the epochs increased, the numbers increased too much, and the number of people also increased, with this particular type of approach we only got this much accuracy. So all of this, uh, we are still in stages of different like work in progress type of stuff, but the idea is that we have improved. If the number of epochs increase, right, the accuracy should actually increase, and if the number of words also increase and the number of people increase, so we have got a good increase, actually just a paragraph, okay. So this is how, just for words we are talking. And when you talk about a total sentence recognition, right, we have got about 20% accuracy. So this is just related to the Devanagari script, and this particular work, okay, is a very good work wherein you can think of just seeing the video, right, and try to understand, right, what that person might have spoken. So this is what uh, we worked on as the second case study for LSTMs. Yeah, so now the third one is something related to change detection algorithms on multispectral imagery and classification. So here, what we mean by change detection is selecting two different images, right? Specifically multispectral images of satellites from the same region with the different at different time frames, right? And if you compare those two images, you are in a position to detect the areas where the changes have occurred. So it might have implications in the healthcare domain. It can have implications on so many other things. But since we were interested to work on hyperspectral imaging and trying to work on deforestation, which actually a climate change problem, so we thought that it's a good area which will have a lot of impact. And then we tried to do this, and we tried to analyze, right, uh, various algorithms, right, unsupervised algorithms, basically PCA with k-means clustering, multivariate alteration detection, iterative reweighted MAD. And these are all unsupervised type of algorithms which we wanted to test again. So what we tried to do here was, we tried to have uh, the spatial frequency selection, and then we had this band partitioning, because you're talking of multispectral imaging, and then you had these various networks. Okay, and then you merge the concatenation, do summation, and then do the classification. So this was basically a classification first, and then the change detection. So it had two specific portions. One was the classification aspect of it, of a hyperspectral multispectral imaging, and then the change detection algorithm. So this particular portion is related to the classification portion of it, not the change detection portion of it, but the classification portion of it. So this is how we tried to work with a Pine data set, and this had this type of a training information, right? So you had a satellite image, and then you had this semantic segmented image, and then you use this particular type of a data set for training. And then uh, you had about 16 classes in the Pine data set, and using k-means neural network, SVM, MLP, and CNN. So these were the various results. So if you see, CNN has performed remarkably well, okay, as compared to other approaches like multi-layer perceptron, then SVM, then KNN, and so many other things, right? So this is just a comparison to understand, right, how CNN behaves correctly, or how it classifies the things correctly, better than other approaches, better than unsupervised approaches. Okay, and then for this thing, right, after we did the classification, we had the change detection also done. Okay, and then change detection also gave us certain good results. So this is how we approach this particular problem. Yeah, so the next thing is something about combining RGB and depth images for indoor scene classification using deep learning. So here what we did is, basically we tried to work with two types of sensors, right? One is a general RGB type of a image. It's a RGB sensor, and you had the depth images from Kinect. So it's just the depth image from Kinect. It's not a PCL or a point cloud type of a data set, but it's just a depth image from a Kinect. So what we tried to do was, we tried to generate in our own data set, then we did some pre-processing, okay, and then we did some model training. So here we used Cafe, right, and other things, and then we had this classification done. So um, see, so this is a CNN network, right? So if you see the CNN network, you had the data, you had various convolution kernels. So each of these convolution layers, for that matter, will have its kernel size. What's the size of the kernel? What is the stride you are going to use? Whether you are using padding, okay? And then you have this ReLU activation function here, and then you have the pooling layer, right? And then you have the convolution layer again, then ReLU 2. And so this is a CNN model, right? This is a snapshot of that portion, right, which you get it when you train a model. Okay, so this is how our data set looked. We had classrooms, we had staff rooms, we had labs, right? Each of this data set had got two types of sensor information. One was RGB and another one was depth. And so we tried to collect in a lot of information, because see, all these deep neural networks, right, require a lot of data for training. If you don't have data for training, you have got various methods to increase in the data set size, because up till you have got a lot of data, right, your network will not train well. That is a known fact. And for doing that, you can have various techniques used, right? Augmentation is one of the methods which people use. So data augmentation is a very, very common thing for very, very difficult data sets or not so open data sets which people get. And we also tried to use in some augmentation techniques, but they were not very successful, in a sense, since we are using two different sensors, right? It was not a single type of a image, so you had got two different type of sensor data. So if you augment the RGB type of thing, obviously it was not correctly tallying with the depth information of that particular location, right? And if you augmented the depth in some manner, right, it was not directly correlating with the RGB stuff. So we had to collect a lot of data. Okay. And then, so yeah, so once we took this type of a data set, then we trained this type of a CNN, right? And then we tried to classify each of this. And so if you see, of course, we tested it with our own model, right? And then fine-tuned BVLC model, everything. So if you see this, right, the proposed network, and then afterwards we fine-tune the model. If you see this, this is the training curve. So this is the training loss in both the cases. This was the first model which we trained, wherein this was the loss, right? And this was the accuracy. And then gradually, when we modified it, when we fine tuned it, when we did parameter modeling and so many other stuff, right, we could get this type of a graph, right, wherein we had a very good accuracy, right? And our training loss was also very less, including the test loss and so many things, right? So this is how we tried to do problem, right, which combined both types of sensors. So this is how actually we have done about 4 to 5 problems. And if you come down to the deep learning frameworks which are available in case of power systems, right, you can have various things which you can work with. I have shown you the work which we have done with Cafe. I have shown you the work which we have done with TensorFlow. I have shown you some work which we have done with PyTorch. Of course, Chainer is something which we had started, but we did not use it extensively. But Chainer is also very good, and Keras is there. So these are certain deep learning frameworks which are easily available, and you can explore, right, each of this in your own problems. And then if you see the IBM Power AI platform, you have got all of these deep learning frameworks, and then you have these supporting libraries from NVIDIA and from TensorFlow and Torch, everything, right? All of these frameworks will give you certain supporting libraries, and each of these libraries are available in the Power AI platform. So yeah, so I suppose, yeah, so that's it, what I thought I would just share. Maybe I rushed through. If any questions are there, certain discussions needs to be done, I'm open for it. So if you can ask me certain specific questions, I would be happy to answer. Otherwise, I'm done with it. Ganeshan sir. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chikurur, for the wonderful presentation and with all the details. Really appreciate it. And there are panelists, from various institutes in
Okay.
India.
Mhm.
I'd like to welcome all of the people, all the panelists. Professor Abhinandan, Professor Priya, Professor Vishnu Priya, and also our partner company, Sri Kamani. And if they have any questions also, you can address. And
Yeah.
also there are a lot of questions, I mean, some questions already like in our chat window, uh,
Okay. Okay. Let me
from
just.
Praveen Kumar, Bhuvaneshwari, and Yeah, you can start addressing them too. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just try to see. Oh, yeah. I had, yeah, I'll just check those chat questions and then I'll start addressing one by one.
And also, Dr. Raju just put a question in Q&A.
Okay,
Let
okay. 1 minute. Okay, okay.
Yeah, looks like there are a lot of people that really
Yeah,
spend
sure.
time on this. Yeah, good.
Yeah, so I will start. I'm just opening the question. This thing, what is it? Um,
Oh, there is another question from Charles Akbaji.
yeah, there are so many questions. So, yeah,
Yeah.
so
So no, you can take a look at one by one, and slowly,
yeah, that's what I'm
Yeah,
trying to do. I'm opening actually the
yeah.
first the chat things, and then yeah, chat. There are about 8 things. So I will just try to. There are in the question answer session. 1 minute. Excuse me for it. Chat. Um, I don't know, chat. Yeah. So I have opened now. Yes. Yes. So I will start one by one. Okay. So there's a question by, I would be reading the question. So to
Yeah,
make it
please go ahead. Yeah, please
more
go ahead.
clear
I'll.
to myself, I would request the person concerned to at least ask me, right? So, okay. So one of the things is, did you use a DCNN model? Could you please elaborate on the model you have used? Okay. So see, technically speaking, any CNN has to be a deep CNN. Okay, so you have got various types of CNN models. For example, you have AlexNet, right? And then you have got lot of other things, right? um, LeeNet, GoogleNet. Okay, so many things. So the effective idea is how local receptive fields, right, are dealt with. So you have to have local receptive fields, and then you have got these shared weights and pooling thing which I told you. But effectively all of these, right, have to be, right, networks which have got lot of neural nets layers, lot of neural network layers. So essentially a CNN is always a deep CNN, if that is clear, right? If that is clear, Praveen. Yeah. So uh, so the next question is, automatic facial recognition, how this application works on aged people. Okay, so very good question. Actually, we have not yet tried to work on aged people, but this is a very good area of research. Automatic facial recognition for expression and emotions is a very good area of work for healthcare applications and specifically aged people. We tried to work on autism as well, but see, what effectively happens is, if your data set cannot capture the nuances, right, of the distinction, then your algorithm design needs to be very what to say, mm, complicated, and it has to capture certain specific things which are very difficult to capture. So this is one thing. Aged people, we surely have not worked, but that's a very good area of work if people are trying to work. Okay, so gradient boost algorithms, that XGBoost or tree based ones. Okay, so let me tell you this again. See, XGBoost and tree based algorithms are machine learning algorithms, wherein uh, there's a difference between machine learning and deep learning, as I told you. So XGBoost is a machine learning algorithm, right? And when you try to use a XGBoost type of algorithm, right, it is machine learning along with statistical processing which you are trying to link. So I am telling you, please try to understand, or please try to actually digest the difference between machine learning and deep learning. It is not that machine learning is bad or deep learning is good, but there has to be this difference of understanding between when to use machine learning and when to use deep learning. It's not that for each application, simply because people are using deep learning, we should use deep learning. Is it feasible for us to use deep learning? Or if it solves by machine learning, okay, is it worth applying machine learning? Because deep learning has got a lot of associated costs, right? You have to have training, you have to have a powerful system, you have to have so many things, but not all the solutions could be easily got by your machine learning algorithms, right? So XGBoost actually is a gradient boosting algorithm, extreme gradient boosting algorithm. Okay, so yeah, so certain specific things are good in XG algorithms, stochastic gradient and regularized gradient, because they use L1 and L2 regularization type of approaches. So yeah, so certain specific things are there. You can have parallelization because of XGBoost. So effectively, it is not massively parallel type of processing which you are using in XGBoost. You are using parallel processing, right? Multi-core processing in case of XGBoost. Yeah. So then what is it? The next one is next one is okay, unsupervised learning algorithms are suited for which type of application? Okay, so so unsupervised learning, okay, examples uh, technically are something like um, spam filtering. Spam filtering is one of the unsupervised no learning tasks. It can be treated as a classification task, but spam filtering is one of the unsupervised learning task, right? And then you have this house price estimation, wherein people are talking of regression, right? And all these things would be supervised learning, right? But clustering is a part of unsupervised learning. So anything wherein you are trying to talk about uh, decision making, wherein um, what to say, wherein not no prior no uh, training is required, right, for a system, right? Like bioinformatics, lot of things are unsupervised, right? So so the goal of unsupervised learning is that you only have input data with you, and there is no output variable or no output parameter or no output which you already know for the training purpose of your system. So you need to use unsupervised learning type of applications. This is what is the answer to that, if I am clear or I have made myself clear for that. Okay, so leap learning, retinal images. Okay, so retinal images, lot of algorithms, actually lot of algorithms. There are specifically good deep learning algorithms, right? Shall we predict? Yes, in unsupervised learning also you are predicting the results. In unsupervised learning also you are predicting the results. Ultimately, these are two ways of trying to make your machine learn something. It can be unsupervised or it can be supervised. Yes. uh, Retinal images, specifically retinal images you are talking of. So there are so many what do you mean by this actually? In neural networks, is there any limitation to set our hidden layer? Yeah, surely, yes. That is what majority of the application development people are doing. If you see the internet now, there are so many models which are coming up. About 100 to 150 models are coming up on the internet daily. So effectively what is going to happen is, let us say I have shown you some problem solution today wherein I have used, let us say, 10 hidden layers, right? Now tomorrow somebody else takes the same model, okay, changes the parameters and either reduces the number of layers to 6 or increases the number of layers to 12. Correct? So that basically is trying to understand or trying to extrapolate, right, your feature extraction strength, if you are trying to talk about the way in which the information needs to be learned by a system. So so how it will be for latent fingerprint images? Fingerprint images, yes, you can um, refer to certain specific see, images are ultimately images, whether they are fingerprint images or any of the specific images, right? But fingerprint images, deep learning, you can surely use this uh, type of architecture. There is no doubt about it, right? But uh, if you're talking of latent fingerprints wherein they have been left unintentionally on surfaces or something like that, but how do you capture that data? But ultimately the data, if it is there, it's again an image. So for a network, for a neural network or for a CNN, when you're trying to train it, it is not bothered about whether the data is unintentionally left or intentionally left. It's one and the same thing for it, no? Yeah. So yeah, so I will try to answer that, like potatoes, yam, cassava peeling. Yes, people are trying to do this, uh, Charles. That, yeah, people are trying to do it, but I'm not clear as to what concept or at what stage you want this to be done. For example, if you are talking of the quality of potatoes and trying to segregate it or something like that, then it's a different issue. But uh, if you are trying to judge the quality or automate a system wherein it has to segregate, right, good potatoes from bad potatoes, yes, it can be done. But um, we have to actually see whether it can be solved, right, by a simple machine learning algorithm, or do you really require deep learning for it? Yes, but surely you can do it, because image processing and classification could be easily done with CNN as compared to machine learning, because you'll have to invest a lot of time in feature extraction, whereas in CNN, if you can give the data set in such a manner that it can learn on its own, right, it will be a very good situation for a solution development here. Yes. So using neural networks, let me see, features from facial images. Okay, so if you see facial images features, right, so there is a specific facial images specific in the literature. If you go, right, there are various types of standard procedures, right? There are 8 facial features, and then you have so many models, right, which basically take talk of these facial feature detections, right? So there are various models which are trying to do it, and we have also used those specific standard models here with us. So yes, so so let me just go to some other question. Features, yeah. um, Let me just ask where we have to apply ML and DL. That's the answer I gave already. Is Anaconda better than PyTorch? It depends. It depends on what your approach is. It depends on what you approach is, right? So if you are accustomed to directly working at command prompt without the hassle of setting environments and trying to see everything, right? So then you can directly start working. Or if you are habituated of corrupting your hard disk or something like that, you can install a temporary environment in Anaconda and then just try to use that environment for your developmental work. And if you uh, don't want it, you can always remove the no, uh, environment or anaconda, and then no, yes, something like that. So then, yeah, so I suppose, yeah, can you give some sample data set for low level, medium level, and high level attribute extracted by CNN? Okay, so it's not a data set actually. In the image, right? In the image, so let me just try to show you that type of a thing. So in the same image, right, you can extract those three levels, and your CNN is going to tell that, okay, this is a low level feature, this is a medium level feature, and this is a high level feature. I can show you some snapshot. Wait a minute, I'll stop sharing and I'll show you that what do you mean by this actually. So give me a sec. So so okay, so something like this. So let me just try to share it. Where is
Yeah,
my
looks like there are a lot of good interest out of this audience anyway. I'm very
yeah,
happy to hear.
yeah, 1 minute, let me see how do I share the thing actually. Where did it go? Let me see. Yeah, so 1 minute, I am, yeah, I have to enlarge this. No, this is question and answer session only.
So there are questions in the chat window also, Professor Chekur.
Yeah, I am trying to do that, but how do I come back here? 1 minute. Ah, so let me just share this screen. Where did it go? Yeah, this one. Let me just share this screen. Is this visible? The deep neural network stuff. So so if this is visible, for this question of what are low level features and what are middle level features and what are high level features, so the CNN or the convolution layer from each of this raw data set or image data set which is given as an input, this particular layer is going to extract these type of features. As I told you, like it can be points. Right now they have here we are showing you that low level features can be lines, right? Horizontal lines, parallel lines, vertical lines. And then you have middle level features, right? Which are curves, okay? Eyelid, because they are all curvatures, right? And the high level features would be these faces. So this is how the low level features, the middle level features, and the high level features are extracted from this image, which when you try to do feature extraction, okay, or feature modeling manually, which is not very easy, right? It's not easy. You will have to have, maybe you will come up with some mathematical equation, right, which tells about this line, this line, this line, but how many lines, right? So something like this, you might escape in certain specific features which you are not able to find out, right? But my CNN automatically tries to capture that information as well. Yeah, so this is what is the basic idea. Yeah.
Oh,
So
this is good. So, sir, there are questions in the chat window also.
yeah,
Uh,
I'll just try to check that as well. Yes.
I think people keep asking more questions anyway. This is good, interesting thing. Maybe we can maybe a different relevant data set for classification.
Yeah, so chat window I have answered some of them. How do you find, oh, there are so many other questions. Yeah. So one more questions. Okay. How to find best algorithm for modeling? In the sense, what type of modeling you are talking of? It depends on the problem actually. Once you come up with a problem, right? Then you will have to choose in the relevant type of algorithm first, and how that algorithm is modeled is something which you are going to do the modeling from actually. When we give different inputs set for classification, the accuracy generated will be negative value also. What do you mean by negative value? The accuracy would be in terms of how much accurate your model is, right? It can be either maximum 100 or it can be 0. What do you mean by negative? In the sense it cannot in the sense, if you are talking of classification problem, you can think to be a negative. Like if you give a photo of a dog, if it classifies it as a cat, right? It is what do you mean by negative? It is a wrong classification, as simple as that. So you are talking in terms of numerical values as such or something like that. If that is the case, then that is why you have to do normalization. That is how your neural network weights are normalized, right, between -1 to +1 or 0 to 1, because you don't want that plasticity elasticity dilemma to happen actually. Yeah. So if that is the question, yes. I suppose, Ganesh sir, it is done, I suppose. Yeah.
So you answered almost all the questions. So I think,
Yeah,
yeah, thank you.
almost
Yeah,
of.
thank you. And if participants, if
Yeah.
you have further questions, do send us a note. You have my email ID, the ADG, the academic discussion group, email ID. Do send
Yeah.
us, and also
I will type in my
check our,
email ID. One
yeah.
minute. I'll show them my email ID also. Mm.
So, Professor, we also would like to hear from you the other AI-based technologies like NLP, chatbot kind of things.
Yeah.
Is
Then,
there a way your teams are working on that? Actually, there are a lot of people did ask that too.
yeah. So 1 minute. I'll just try to share. Uh, yeah. So this is my mail ID for reference. If people are interested, people can send in their queries or any other information if they want. Yeah. So yes. So yeah, Ganeshan sir, we will have another webinar or detailed webinar or something
Yeah,
like
this is
that, or some
basically
2 days.
this is initially most today, but
Yeah.
people are asking bot and chat ops development and natural generation and also sentiment analysis. So
Yeah.
it would be nice to have these kind of sessions too going forward. Probably we can have a kind of a work group or something under open power and probably
Yeah.
create penetration and interest among all these deep learning AI enthusiasts going
Yeah.
forward. That would be
Sure.
a nice way to address the worldwide people. And
Sure.
yeah, let's plan out something so
Yeah.
that this can grow further with your the knowledge as well as whatever you have been spending time on on our power system. We can take
Yes.
it to the entire world. You
Sure.
can,
Sure.
okay.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you
Yeah.
for a
Thank you
wonderful
so much.
presentation
Thanks.
again,
Yeah.
and
Thanks for
also
giving me opportunity as well. Ganesh.
yeah, yeah, thank you
Yes.
for all the participants as well as the panelists who have been busy listening to this webinar as well as uh, you know uh, questioned a lot. There are a lot, nearly 15 plus questions. Overall, I'd like to thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good day and good night. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Yeah,
Bye.
bye. Bye. Bye.